Hello, dear ones. I hope this finds you well. Today in my inbox, there was something from my website that there was a broken link, is what they call it. So I just opened it and I saw that it was from an older blog post from 2018. And there was a link that was not working anymore. So I just fixed it. And then I was just looking at what this blog post was about. It's like, really? And it's called Three Powerful Steps to Dissolve Your Core Wounding, I think, something like that. And I thought, well, that's interesting because this is what I've been talking about for quite a while again. And then, boom, here's an article that I wrote in 2018. So it's about more than 6 years ago, actually. And I read it and I was like, wow, I already knew that in 2018 with such specific clarity that it really surprised me. And why am I sharing this with you? It's because when we live from that place of presence, everything is fresh. That's why when I speak here, it is fresh. I know about it's not like I know nothing. There's nothing to pull it in from. Of course, I have a lot of experience in this for many, many years. But when it comes out, and it's same when I write, it just comes and I just let it come out. And I'm sharing this with you because if you also have that sense like you can really trust that. And the process that we're in is, of course, learning to trust that. So here I'm seeing that blog post and I'm like, wow. And it was so specific. And I'm going to post the link to that blog post below in the description. This is something that's been with me for so long and it feels fresh every single time. I already said it, but I want to say it again because it's like, how is that possible? How is it possible that I didn't remember that when I talked about it? Well, it's because it's fresh. And I think it's really beautiful that we can live fresh in each moment, free from our past. I'm not saying I'm free from my past. There's plenty more layers, and there probably will be for all of us for a very long time. That's fine. That does not stop us from becoming more and more who we are. That shouldn't stop us from throwing in the towel and say, there's too many layers here. I'm just going to go back into the matrix and go to sleep and pretend that I'm a zombie or a robot or whatever. But here I'm sharing the three powerful essential steps that I haven't quite talked about in the way that this article talks about it. So I want to just mention them. The first one in my article talks about self-love and that it's like we need to or when we need to sharpen our pruning instrument of self-love. So I see it's like a pruning instrument. But we need to sharpen it. So what I mean by that is we need to get really good at it. So when things come at us that want us to be not loving, we can cut it right away. And also, the better we get at it, the more we start clearing away of what has basically grown out of this core wound. Remember the core wound that we are born into the matrix, right? It's like we come through this portal and the first thing we experience is I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, I'm unlovable, not enough. I've talked about this before and there is a really good video on that on my channel. Out of that belief that we have a separate sense, separate from God, separate from love. That is how our life starts growing. So you can imagine it's this tree, and it grows out of this misperception of who we are. And that's why we create a life where we need to work hard because we are cut off from the root before we come into this life, which is, of course, the divine fulfillment and the fountain of love. We feel we're separate, so we build a life and we work hard and we have relationships because we don't want to be alone. So the relationships are not good, but at least I'm not alone. And we don't eat healthy food because we feel so bad about ourselves that we just want to stuff the pain that is covering how we really feel. And on it goes. So out of this misconception, this misidentity that we're separate from the divine, we built this whole life and becomes this big, let's say a big bush, a big tree or something. So here we are, we have our pruning instrument of self-love. And as we start descending and going into we want to get down into the bottom, basically the roots of this belief, not before the belief. The roots are what this has been growing out of. We are going to meet all these other beliefs. This is all the layers that we keep running into. And if they're too scary, we just bounce back up into the matrix and try and work harder or do this better or whatever it is we do in this madhouse of the matrix. But when we learn, when we have a good self-love instrument, that's why I always encourage to learn self-love. I call myself a self-love mentor because I have seen it to be one of the most important skills to have in order to dissolve all this stuff that is the opposite of love, the opposite of self-love. So when we get really good at it, step number one, we're really good at it now. We've practiced it, we're getting better at it. And as we go down, this is a sharp one. So we can just start cutting away and removing and changing things that we know are not good for us. So in this article, I also talk about that is how we treat ourselves. Are we eating healthy? Are we eating junk? You know, if you're loving to yourself, you don't eat junk. You give your body, you nourish your body with good things because then it gets more vibrant and you have more energy to go deeper down. And then there's exercise, there's getting good sleep, doing yoga, doing detoxing. I talk about that too in the article, you know, doing a lot of detoxing because we have been filled with toxins from the day we were born that's been put into us with injections and baby food that had all kind of junk in it and all the things. And now specifically more and more now, what we eat is really not very healthy anymore. You have to do a lot of work actually to get healthy food as much as it is possible in a world that is very toxic. So part of that pruning as we go into the bush and start cutting away, you know, so we eventually can come down to the roots, which is where this whole false identity is coming out of. We need to get down into that, but we also need to get past all the things that keep moving us away. It's just as important. And it's very hard to go into the core wound if we don't have a certain amount of stamina and presence. This is really, really important. So if you read that article, you'll probably get some ideas of maybe where you can start doing better with yourself, or maybe you need help with your diet. You can reach out to somebody who works with food and diets, or you might have some teeth issues. Maybe you need to have some some dental work done because the toxins in your mind, keeps you fuzzy and you don't have enough energy to do this deeper work. So there is a lot to it. And I mean, 6.5 years ago, I wrote this and it is just as current today, maybe even more so, because there's more and more toxins being poured into the world. So here we are, cutting away, getting closer to the biggie, like, oh, I'm not good enough. Why am I even here? Doesn't matter what I do, it's never good enough. Now we need something else. And there are ways to get to this also. I've been using EFT tapping for many years. I find that can be very, very helpful to kind of unhook some of these meridians or neural pathways that run in our body automatically. Tapping can click it, can undo it so that suddenly there's more space, there's more presence, more energy, and then we have more available to go down. So there's many, many ways. This is just one of many, and I'm sure you have your own variety and favorites in that. But then when we come down to the core wound, which is I'm separate from God. I am a separate sense of self, and I'm disconnected from fulfillment, from love, from safety, all the goodies that we really long for here. Now, this is where we need a good amount of presence. And we need to bring that presence into these very, very unbearable feelings. They're only unbearable as long as we bounce up against the resistance to feeling it. But once we have enough presence, then we can make that shift. It's easier to say, okay, I'm present. That means you're not lost in all the branches and the prickly things, whatever. You're not so stuck in that because you have been pruning your way down. And of course, everything I share is just a metaphor. And I hope that some of it helps you see that, oh, I see, I didn't know I was doing that. But the more presence we have, the easier it is to be present with this awfulness that we live in, that we live with, as if that's what we are. So we have a bigger sense of presence, a bigger sense of energy that is able to hold this core wounding, these beliefs, without getting sucked into them. We can actually be present with them and we can let ourselves sink into it and feel it, feel what it feels like to really feel that nobody loves you. Instead of it's living here and you go like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to go and find somebody who loves me. Or like, I don't want to feel that. I'm going to take a drink. Whatever it is, I'm going to go work harder. I'm going to go and work out. I'm going to go meditate. But again, it can be away from, it can also go there. That's something we learn with more presence. So then we can just be there and we can just begin to feel how awful it feels. If you really, really believe this core belief, this core wound, and we do, we believe it. And we believe it, and that's why we keep moving away from it. But if we find some courage and some support, I still always highly, highly suggest to get support when you go to these scary places first, because they can be pretty intense. Then you can start just letting yourself feel the pain or the fear that is invoked when you go there, that is living in here, right? It's that frozen droplet. Now you go in and you just be with that lovingly, self-lovingly, because you learned that in stage 1. And then it can start melting. So there will be tears, or there might be screaming, or there might be who knows what. That is something we can't prepare for. We can just be open to whatever wants to come. And once we go there, there is always a lot. Could be shaking, could be sweating, so many things. I've gone there many times, and it's never comfortable going there, but once you're in it, it just feels like, oh, now things are moving. Yeah, let them move, let them move. And then after it has moved, and it can be a while. I've done some years ago, I went into one of the core ones. What was it? I can't really remember actually, but it's probably something like, nobody cares what I have to say or what I do. And then I really went like, I am just going to feel this, what it's actually like to feel what I believe in the back of my mind. And I took several days. I mean, I would spend several hours every day because I just like wanted to get to the core and stay with it, not shy away from it. So I did that, and it was a lot of crying and it was a lot of awfulness, just moving through. But after that, things were just different. I'm not saying it's all gone, but a lot of that energy was just being released. And of course, what can we do with liberated and released energy? We can put it on what truly matters to us. Much, much better investment. Much better return on your investment too, I promise you. So go and read that article. If I may say so myself, I was like, wow, this is actually really good because I just read it and I was surprised because there was so much detail and clarity in it, probably more than I just shared here with you. So here's another piece for the full liberation, which we're all in the midst of, and we can all support each other getting there. And always, if you need support in that, feel free to reach out to me. Link is in the description, and then we can see if we are a good match to work together to help you prune your self-love pruner and learn how to use it, and then eventually to just melt into something that's been so contracted that can finally start letting go.